If you had to feed your family for a week without electricity, without stores, without warning, what would you reach for first? Most people don't have an answer, but the shelves are already changing. In just the past 2 months, sugar prices are up 21%. Rice and beans are missing from dozens of grocery stores. Some retailers are limiting salt purchases, and quietly, we've entered a new phase of the crisis. One where the worst shortages won't announce themselves with headlines, but with silence in the aisles. These aren't luxury items, they're survival staples. And if you wait until everyone else realizes what's happening, you may already be too late. Because for millions of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, food is now so uncertain. And when the next storm, blackout, or supply disruption hits, you won't have the chance wondering what happened. You'll be asking why you didn't prepare. So what are the 10 foods that smart people are already stockpiling, quietly, steadily, and without panic? The list that will rescue your family one day is now revealed in the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Number 1, white rice. What if tomorrow, the most reliable food on your shelf quietly vanished, and no one warned you until it was too late? There was a time when white rice meant security. Not comfort food, not luxury. Just a quiet, dependable presence in the pantry, for families living paycheck to paycheck, for seniors watching every dollar, for caregivers stretching every meal. It was a silent promise that no matter what, there'd be something warm to eat at the end of the day. But that promise is cracking. Since May, droughts in Thailand, India, and California have devastated harvests. Several exporting countries have banned foreign sales. And, quietly, without headlines, the price of white rice in the US has surged 27% in just 5 weeks. In rural areas, shelves aren't just picked over, they're empty in some towns. Rice is being rationed by store policy. A man in his 60s living alone in Mississippi used to buy a 20-pound bag each month. Now he sees the price and goes to bed hungry instead. In places like his, rice wasn't just food, it was a survival plan. Cheap, calorie-dense, long-lasting, and comforting in its simplicity. For older Americans, it was perfect. It didn't require expensive cooking tools, didn't spoil fast, and didn't need much to become a meal. That's why it was a staple in soup kitchens, mobile pantries, and community centers across the Midwest and South. But even those places are now reporting shortages. A woman in her 40s raising 2 children in Nevada used to keep a bulk sack tucked behind her pantry door. When her paycheck came late, it was the rice that kept them full, but now, the price has doubled in her area, and the last few bags were bought up in minutes. And what happens when even rice, the fallback of fallbacks, becomes too expensive, too scarce, or too controlled? Imagine this. In wealthier zip codes, aisles lined with organic jasmine and basmati, delivery trucks unloading bulk rice by the pallet. Meanwhile, in low-income neighborhoods, people wait in food bank lines for a single cup of grain, not because they mismanaged money, but because the system decided quiet survival wasn't profitable anymore. White rice was never meant to divide us. Yet quietly, it is. And if that silent layer of food security is peeling away, what else might follow? So while the shelves still carry it, add it to your cart. Quietly, before the panic. Number 2, dried beans. Imagine your family is hungry, the fridge is empty, and all that stands between you and despair is a bag of beans no longer on the shelf. In another era, beans were just beans, but for millions of Americans, especially in 2025, they've become something far more profound. The last form of affordable nourishment that doesn't spoil, doesn't demand refrigeration, and doesn't ask for much, just heat, water, and hope. Since early May, farmers across Arizona, New Mexico, and West Texas have reported historic crop failures. The Southwest's parched soil has pushed bean production down by almost 40%, yet no one's screaming on the news. There are no headlines, just bare bins and rising prices in quiet neighborhoods. A woman in her 50s, living in a mobile home outside El Paso, says she's cooked beans every Sunday for 15 years. It's the only meal I can make that lasts 4 days. She shares. And the kids never complain, but lately, she's been forced to buy smaller bags, less food, more worry, and this isn't just her story. It's the story of retirees with fixed incomes, of single parents skipping meals so their toddlers can eat, of young couples facing rising rent and choosing between protein and electricity, food pantries in Detroit, Phoenix, and parts of rural Mississippi now report dried beans as one of the first items to vanish every morning. Meanwhile, across wealthier suburbs, organic chickpeas and heirloom pinto beans sit neatly packaged for $11.99 a pound, marketed as a trendy way to detox, not as someone's last lifeline. So what happens when even beans, the food of resilience, of community, of ancestral recipes, get priced off the table for the people who need them most? The line between living and enduring is getting thinner, and if you wait too long, you won't even hear it snap. Those paying attention are already storing them for their children, for their aging parents, for the comfort of knowing one more meal will still be possible, no matter what tomorrow brings. Stock up before this simple bag becomes someone else's privilege. Number 3, powdered milk. Somewhere in America tonight, children will go to sleep crying, not because they misbehaved, but because there was no milk, and their family had nothing left to give. What used to be a simple backup, powdered milk, has now become the last hope for those living on the edge, for struggling parents, caregivers, and the elderly. It is the one thing that could mean the difference between a hungry night and a little peace. But that peace is vanishing. Since the start of 2025, nearly 1 in 10 dairy farms in the US, has closed. Feed costs have skyrocketed. Trucking shortages and factory closures have slowed production. And in this perfect storm, powdered milk has become harder and harder to find. Not because it's trendy, but because it's all that's left when the fridge goes dark and the money runs dry. A single mother in Kansas shared her quiet panic. I opened the cabinet and saw the can was empty. I had no milk, nothing. And my son looked up at me like I had the answer. But she didn't. That moment, facing your child with empty hands, cuts deeper than hunger itself. Across the country, it's no longer just one story. It's a shared reality. Parents are watering down bottles to stretch a few more feedings. Food banks are skipping infant milk entirely, and quiet desperation is replacing routine grocery trips. Powdered milk is shelf-stable, nutritious, and adaptable for both young children and the elderly. But now, that reliability is fading. Each can that disappears from the store is another thread pulled from the safety net, holding so many families together. And in this widening gap, we are seeing two Americas, one that waits, and one that prepares. This isn't just about food, it's about the unbearable ache of powerlessness, about mothers holding crying babies and whispering lies like you'll eat soon, while praying the stores restock tomorrow. Those who are thinking ahead are already saving a can, not out of fear, but to protect the ones who can't protect themselves before the next empty shelf becomes your own. Prepare what you can, because the most innocent should never have to suffer for the silence of a system that failed them. Number 4, rolled oats. What if the last warm meal you could afford quietly disappeared from your shelf before you even noticed for generations? Rolled oats have been the quiet guardian of the American breakfast. It never asked much, just water, maybe a pinch of salt. It didn't need a stove, just heat. It didn't demand money, just time. And it didn't carry shame, only comfort. But now, that comfort is slipping away. A late frost this spring wiped out nearly a quarter of the oat harvest across North America. In tandem, fertilizer costs remain volatile, and shipping delays continue to choke bulk deliveries. Since 2022, rolled oat prices have surged nearly 60%. And in June 2025, many food banks and small-town grocers are struggling to source even the basics. A veteran in his 70s from Ohio recalls surviving a 7-day blizzard with nothing but white rice and oats. It was enough to stay warm. That bowl of oatmeal kept me going. But this month, for the first time, his local store had none in stock. Just empty bins and a restocking soon sign that never seems to change. This isn't a story about luxury. It's about a foundation being shaken. Caregivers in low-income nursing homes are cutting back portions. Diabetics who depend on oats for balanced blood sugar are rationing. Single parents are sending their kids to school with toast and water because the 2-pound bag of oats they counted on is gone. Oats were never glamorous. That was the point. They belonged to everyone. They stayed with you when budgets shrank and cupboards thinned. But now, even that dignity is in danger when the most basic breakfast begins to vanish. We aren't just losing food, we're losing a quiet sense of safety, a morning ritual that once said, "You're still okay." Those who see what's coming are already preparing, because no one wants to let their children, or their aging parents, wake up one day and find there's nothing warm left to offer. Stock up now, while a bag of oats still costs less than a bottle of vitamins, because when shelves run dry, the silence at breakfast might be louder than you ever imagined. Number 5, canned fish. When the power's out, the fridge is warm, and dinner depends on what doesn't spoil. What will you reach for when the last can is gone for generations? Canned fish was never fancy, but it was everything. A simple pull tab opened not just protein, but possibility. It meant lunch for a child, dinner for a retiree, or an emergency fallback when meat became a luxury. But today, that fallback is disappearing. Since April, Morocco, one of the world's major exporters, has seen a sharp drop in canned fish production due to climate strain and fuel restrictions. Global prices are climbing. In the US, the cost of canned tuna and sardines has jumped over 18% in just 2 months. Some brands have doubled since last summer. For a retired man in Arizona, it's already too real. A can of mackerel and a pack of noodles kept me fed during last year's heatwave blackout. He said, "Now that same can cost double, if you can even find it." He's not alone. Food pantries are now issuing fewer cans per household. School meal programs have begun phasing out tuna packets because they're too expensive, and what was once a humble staple in nearly every American cupboard is becoming a ghost. Vanishing not in panic, but in silence. Canned fish is more than food. It's history. It's resilience. For inland towns and storm-prone regions, it was the meat that didn't rot when the freezer failed. It was peace of mind in a metal tin, now that peace is eroding. So what happens next when the storms come and the power's out? Do we remember the shelf that used to hold 6 cans? Now holds none. What do we tell our kids when they ask for tuna salad, and all we have is dry bread and an apology? And what if the next crisis isn't loud or sudden but quiet? A slow drift into fewer options, lonelier kitchens, and colder meals. The people who quietly bought a few extra cans each week won't say, "I told you so." They'll just open one up and keep their families fed. Number 6, peanut butter. A spoonful of peanut butter can fuel a child for a day. So what happens when that spoon starts disappearing from the jar? Peanut butter was never just a snack, it was a survival food in disguise, packed with protein, full of healthy fats, easy to store and ready in seconds, for working families, elderly couples, and tired parents trying to feed picky kids. It's long been the silent hero of the pantry, but that hero is slipping away. Since May 2025, peanut crops across the southern U.S. have suffered under intense drought conditions. Simultaneously, processing and shipping costs have surged. As of this month, the average retail price for traditional peanut butter is up 14%, but more importantly, many of the affordable brands are disappearing. What's left trendy jars labeled superfood spread, organic blends with coconut oil, and boutique brands priced at $7 or more. One grandmother in Michigan shared, "My grandson calls it nutrition candy. I always keep a jar just for him, but now, I check the shelves and see nothing under $5. I skip meals to make sure he still gets his toast." And her story reflects something bigger. At school lunch programs, peanut butter sandwiches were once the backup. Cheap, filling, and allergy-friendly in select districts. Now, supply managers are quietly switching to cheaper, less nutritious options. In food pantries, jars of peanut butter used to be a staple. Now, volunteers say it's one of the first things to run out. Peanut butter isn't fancy, but it was dependable. It didn't need heating. It didn't need a fridge. In times of crisis, flood, fire, blackout, it could keep you nourished for days. But now, that quiet safety is being priced off the shelf. And what happens when even this last line of food security begins to vanish? What will parents pack in lunchboxes when the peanut butter's gone? What will widowed seniors eat at night when toast is all they have? Peanut butter was never just a spread. It was a symbol of warmth, of resilience, of something that stayed while everything else changed. So ask yourself, if the food we trusted most quietly fades away, what else are we losing without even noticing? Number 7, honey. What if the one food that outlasts even war is also going to vanish quietly from your home for over 3,000 years? Honey has been a rare constant in a world full of fragility. Archaeologists have found it sealed in ancient tombs, still golden, still edible, across centuries and cultures. It served not just as sweetness, but as medicine, survival. One spoon could soothe a child's cough. One jar could last a decade. Honey was never just food. It was a kind of quiet security. And yet, right now, that security is under siege. In the spring of 2025, bee populations across the United States collapsed by 37%. Entire apiaries stood silent. Fields bloomed without pollinators, and the hum that once symbolized life began to fade. The culprits are painfully familiar pesticides, habitat destruction, extreme temperature swings. But this year, the damage was sharper, faster, and more widespread. The consequences are showing up where it hurts most in the grocery aisle. What used to be a reliable shelf item is now becoming rare. Prices have surged since May, and industry analysts warn that honey could double in cost by September, and not because of hoarding, because of absence. In many neighborhoods, families are already finding the cheapest brands gone. Only boutique jars remain, labeled raw, organic, artisanal, priced at $7 or $8. Some stores have started limiting purchase quantities. Honey is transforming silently, from a basic household good into a luxury preserve. For generations, this golden syrup served as a backup plan when sugar ran out. Honey was there when medicine cabinets were empty. Honey soothed the symptoms. When storms knocked out power and pantries thinned, honey still sat uncorrupted, ready. But what happens when even honey goes missing? Imagine the first cold snap of the year. A parent reaches for a familiar remedy, but the jar is gone and the shelves are bare. A school nurse wants to mix it into tea for a child with a sore throat, but she's told to conserve. And in the homes where money runs tightest, that missing spoonful will mean more than inconvenience. It will signal the loss of yet another thread holding life together. If honey so ancient, so stable, so trustworthy can vanish, then what else might follow? Number 8, salt. Still think salt is cheap, ordinary, and always available? Try to find it at your local Walmart today, and see how fast it disappears. Salt isn't glamorous. It doesn't melt hearts or draw crowds. But for thousands of years, it held civilization together. Salt preserved meat before we had freezers. It paid Roman soldiers before there was currency. It flavored even the blandest wartime rations. And it gave poor families a way to make scraps taste like supper. But in 2025, salt, one of the oldest, most taken for granted survival tools, is slowly being pulled from under our feet. This year, natural salt supply chains across the globe are being disrupted. Imports from Himalayan regions have slowed drastically due to export restrictions and geopolitical tension. Mediterranean salt fields are facing yield cuts because of climate-related flooding, even in the U.S. Domestic salt mining is hitting regulatory delays, and fuel price surges have doubled transportation costs. That once lightweight, always affordable sack of salt. Now it's becoming harder to move, stock, and afford, and the effects are trickling down. In agricultural towns across Montana and Idaho, ranchers are rationing salt once used to cure meats through the winter. Families in the Midwest, once buying in bulk for home canning, are now stretching tiny containers through the month. Emergency preppers, once confident in their salt supplies, are finding online listings out of stock or restricted to small quantities. Salt was never just seasoning. It was preservation without it. Raw meat rots without it. Vegetables lose their shelf life without it. Your emergency stockpile crumbles the minute the power goes out. Salt holds moisture, carries minerals, prevents bacteria. It's not a flavor, it's a barrier between survival and waste. And yet today, grocery stores are swapping cheap bulk bags for luxury jars. Pink, smoked, volcanic, all labeled artisan, all priced like caviar. On one aisle, salt, sparkles, and gift boxes. On the other hand, the basics are gone. It's easy to miss this moment. No sirens, no panic, but quietly, in kitchens across the country, people are realizing the most basic building block of food security might not be so basic anymore. If we can no longer count on salt, what does that say about everything else? What happens when the next blackout hits? And there's meat to preserve, but no salt to save it. What do we tell a generation raised on takeout and frozen meals? When the flavor and the function of salt becomes a luxury, salt isn't just about taste, it's about survival. And maybe we should have noticed the silence on the shelf before it became the loudest warning of all. Number 9, sugar. Sugar isn't a treat, it's survival, disguised in sweetness. And now, even that illusion is beginning to dissolve. For most of our lives, sugar felt eternal. It was the bag on the shelf you never questioned, a staple that quietly threaded its way into nearly every recipe, every celebration, every comfort. A spoon in tea, a cup in birthday cake, a scoop for jam to preserve summer fruit into winter hope. But in 2025, that dependable white crystal has begun to slip away. With Brazil, the world's largest sugar exporter, cutting back shipments due to weather shocks and fuel costs, global prices are surging. In just 2 months, the average cost of white sugar in U.S. grocery stores has climbed 21%. But the most alarming shift isn't the price, it's the quiet disappearance. Basic brands are missing, smaller bags are selling out faster, and in places that once kept sugar in bulk, ration signs are quietly appearing. And this isn't just a baking inconvenience. Sugar has always played a deeper role in survival. It preserves fruit and meat when freezers fail. It provides instant energy for the elderly and diabetic during blood sugar crashes. In emergencies, it's stirred into water as a basic oral rehydration remedy. For struggling parents, a spoonful in warm milk is often all they have to offer a child at bedtime. Now, across the country, families are adjusting. Less jam for the winter, fewer cookies baked on weekends. No sugar for coffee before long shifts. And in communities where bartering still supplements tight incomes, the absence of sugar doesn't just remove sweetness, it removes value. Meanwhile, high-end markets continue to stock shelves with raw cane, organic maple crystals, demerara cubes, and artisan coconut sugars. Their labels speak of purity and luxury, but in neighborhoods where pantries are bare, even a single cup of white sugar is starting to feel like a lost tradition. So what happens when the smallest comforts, measured not in calories, but in memories, begin to vanish? What do we tell children who wonder why there's no birthday cake this year? How do we explain that the jar of strawberry jam they loved was more than just fruit and sugar? It was a gesture of care, made possible by a bag that no longer fits the budget. And when sweetness itself becomes conditional, how much longer before hope begins to taste the same? Number 10, dry soup mixes. When there's nothing fresh, no power, and barely any time, sometimes all you need is hot water and hope in a cup. But even that is slipping away. Soup is more than just food. It's warmth, it's routine, it's memory, for many Americans. A dry soup mix wasn't just a pantry item, it was a survival plan. It was what you turned to during snowstorms, power outages, or nights when dinner had to come fast. Cheap, and with as little effort as possible. But now, even soup, perhaps the humblest, most forgiving form of nourishment, is becoming harder to come by. In the past year, dozens of small soup packing factories have shuttered. The cost of ingredients like dehydrated vegetables, seasoning blends, and shelf-stable starches has gone up significantly. Large corporations have shifted toward premium soup products, while affordable dry mixes have vanished from discount shelves and online stores. Amazon listings show familiar $1 packs sold out or marked up 200%. Dollar stores now have rows of empty hooks where 3-minute soup used to be, and the loss is more than just physical. It's emotional. For elderly people living alone, soup was often the only warm meal they could reliably make. For single parents working 2 jobs, it was dinner in minutes without the need for chopping or planning. For recovering patients, truck drivers, college students living in vans, and disabled veterans, it was heat, hydration, and something that resembled home now, what's left, when the power goes out in winter, when the streets are frozen, when the car breaks down and the paycheck is delayed. What do you reach for when even soup is gone? Soup used to be the quiet reassurance that no matter how hard things got, you could still sit down with something hot, something simple. But when the shelves stop carrying even that, a deeper kind of hunger begins to grow. In upscale kitchens, soup is artisanal, packaged in mason jars with lentils and herbs, sold at $12 a kit. But in working class homes, that same idea once lived inside a flat paper pouch that cost under $1 and mattered far more. So what happens when even the ability to warm your hands over a bowl is priced away, packaged out, and forgotten? What happens when just add water becomes a luxury instruction? What part of dignity slips away when a person has to explain why dinner tonight is a glass of tap water and nothing else? And how long before we realize that the collapse of a 99-cent soup mix says more about our country than any economic report ever could? This isn't about panic, it's about peace of mind. Smart people don't wait for headlines to shout that it's too late. They notice the empty shelves before the cameras arrive. They watch prices rise not with fear, but with quiet urgency. They prepare not with noise, but with intention. One bag at a time. One shelf at a time. Not because they expect the worst, but because they want to sleep better at night, knowing they've done their part to protect the people they love. Because when panic begins, shelves empty. But if you've stocked wisely, your family won't just survive, they'll sit at the table, they'll eat together, and years from now, they'll remember that you were the calm in the storm.